Testing 1, 2. So, a bit of context for where this story is starting. These diary entries are from January of 2025, which is exactly a year ago this week. And what led me to get to that point prior to admitting myself to the hospital was about 2.5 months of staying at a relative's house. And prior to that, I was sleeping in my car for 16 months. I was homeless, living in my car, door dashing every day to survive. So it wasn't easy. I'll tell that story another time, but just for context, I was in survival mode for 16 months. October of 2024, I then drove from California to Colorado, got off the road, stayed with family from mid-October of 2024 to the end of 2024, and then we are now 1 year ago at the mental hospital. So I didn't have much time from when I got out of the car to when I ended up in the hospital. And I believe that was partly due to just the state of mind I was in coming out of the car and then heading into the holidays, which was the first one where I wasn't in person with my kids for the first time in their lives. And the first time I wasn't with my kids for the holidays, and that is over 24 years of time. So it was a bit traumatic to say the least. And interestingly, at that time, I couldn't consciously put it together. I can now because hindsight and time give me a chance to reflect. But I can say on a subconscious level, not being with family, my kids the holiday season of 2024, that was, yeah, on a subconscious level, it was killing me. But I was so overwhelmed with survival mode and coming out of that, it was a giant soup inside my head. Sometimes I'll laugh when I'm telling these stories, and I think sometimes that confuses people. Like, well, dude, why are you laughing about such serious, like, life-changing shit? And to be frank, at some point you gotta laugh. I mean, if you don't, I mean, yeah, if you don't, yeah, you just you gotta lighten the mood at some point. I don't know how else to describe it other than that. Actually, reverse that. There's a letting go, and it's a letting go that is not letting go defined as I don't care. It's not that letting go. It's a letting go of, like, letting go of a story that you keep telling yourself over and over again. And that story does damage to you, etc., because you keep telling it to yourself. And until you let go of that story, you're not free of that, whatever is going on. So, very much in line with that, once I was able to let go of what was holding me back, then it became much easier for me to find lightness in some of what I was saying. So, there you go. So, I may chuckle from time to time, just a heads up. So, I'm going to read this first diary entry. Like I said, I'd been off the road for 2.5 months. I had just gotten through the holidays for the first time without my kids, and I was not in a very good headspace. Fortunately, I was staying with family. If I was alone in the car, I don't know what would have happened to me, to be frank. I may not be making this video. I may not be here. Who knows? I was at relatives, so they were keen on picking up on my energy, how I was acting, behaving, etc. I'm not aware of it because even though I like to think I'm very self aware and I can kind of see myself from outside of myself, you can't see it all. There's no way. And being in that headspace, I wasn't able to make good judgments about self care. And that was a problem for a while. And for a while, I mean years and years and years. There was a weird paradigm in my head where if I was feeling like psychologically not well, I felt bad about something, there'd be a voice in my head that says, well, you deserve it. That's why. And it would double down on my feelings and continue to berate me and beat me down. And that was just the little story I was telling myself. So I didn't seek care. And in this instance, going to this hospital, if family had not, I want to say urge instead of push, but if I looking back a year ago, they were pushing. If they could have said, or if they could have put me in the hospital, they would have. But I had to do it. I had to step up and self admit. And I knew just by how I was feeling and how dark everything felt that they were telling me the truth and that I needed to pay attention to what they were telling me. So on Monday, yes, it would have been a Monday night a year ago from this day. It was mid-afternoon, somewhere between 3 and 4, 3:30, 4:30. We drove from the house to a mental hospital in Boulder County, Colorado, and went into the hospital, walked up to we went into the ER, and I was in a daze. I had gathered a small collection of things to bring with me, to have with me inside the facility, but otherwise, I was zoned out. I was dissociating hard. It was a daydreamy, out of body experience, as if you were experiencing your own life as a movie, right? You're living your life, but it's like you're observing it as if you were watching a movie. It's a very weird thing. People who've experienced it know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a very weird perception thing. But that was going on. And so my relative found someone there who could talk to me and point me in the right direction. So I ended up speaking to a nurse who was a trauma nurse, who basically did your first assessment and then figured out where to put you in the big, line of people and line of people trying to get in. So she asked me some questions about, do you want to hurt yourself? How do you feel? Blah, 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 blah. And I answered her questions with honesty. And just from that alone, she said, okay, I think we need to keep you here. And I honestly don't remember saying anything shocking. I didn't say, oh, I want to, put a fork in my eye. No, it was just like, I feel awful. I told her what I've been thinking about a lot, and it wasn't like I've been thinking about harming myself. It was thinking about family and just my life in general and where I am, how did I get here, and that kind of thing. So they admitted me. It was clear I needed some observation. And honestly, I just needed to get assessment and get set straight because when I admitted to the hospital at this point, I had had no psychiatric care of any kind regarding my depression for going on 6 years at that point. 6 years of consistent depression at some level. So, sometimes it's like peak, other times it's low, but there's always seems to be something going on. So yeah, they admitted me, and what happened was I was put into a waiting room that was just like a doctor's room, that the table that you could lay on but also sits up. It had a cushion on it, chair in the corner, and they put me in there and they said, okay, you got to wait here for a little bit. And I thought, okay, cool, I'll just meditate because that's what I do when I have time and space, and instead of being quote unquote bored, I'll meditate. So I did that, and I got very relaxed in that room, and I nodded off to sleep because suddenly I had a knock on the door. I opened it up and it said, Mr. Mahoney. And I woke right the hell up, sat up, and there were two cops. And I was like, wait, where am I going? They said, we're taking you over across the street to the hospital. They said, it's our job to bring patients over there. And then I suddenly got a sense of, what the hell time is it? And I asked them, what time is it right now? They said it was 9:30, 9:45 at night. So like 4 or 5 hours blew by. I must have just been laying there sleeping. I must have needed it. So anyway, they put me in a wheelchair. They take me out to a car. I get in the back. It is a full-blown squad car. Had the protective glass, so I couldn't like reach up to the front. They literally drive me across the street. They were not kidding. And I went into a ambulance pull in, it has the cover over the top. You pull in, double doors open. I get out. They have another wheelchair. I get in that one. And mind you, it's maybe 15 degrees out because it is January. It is Colorado. And so I had a hospital gown on with a pair of shorts and a blanket wrapped around me. So they got me into the building pretty quick. And I got brought into the main room. It's a large room. Wheeled in there. Someone came up, one of the psychiatric nurses. And that was when I got out of the chair. The gentleman, the policeman that took me in, I said goodbye to them. And then I sat down with the nurse and started to get oriented inside the hospital. That first night, the psychiatric nurse asked me if I needed anything for help with sleeping, and I didn't. I was fine in that regard. But I don't know, there's this experience I always get when I'm in a new place, especially when I'm sleeping at the place for the first time. There's just a feeling. It's different than, you know, day in, day out. So I was exhausted by that point. But then it was like going for 11 because I had sat and done some paperwork for a while, admitting paperwork inside the actual facility itself. So I went to sleep, and the next day I got up. I went through the whole day of routine, had no idea what was coming at me. And at the end of the day, I sat down and I thought to myself, it would be a good thing, I think, to take some notes, write down what I'm experiencing, just so I have some record of it. And I've read over my entries, and honestly, I I wouldn't have remembered a great deal of this. A whole lot of it just would have been lost. So we begin on Tuesday, which would be a year ago from tomorrow at 7 p.m. when I sat down to begin to write. Tuesday, 7 p.m. First full day here. Good place and people. I met with all staff assigned to me today, and it was largely straightforward. My schedule is quite full, with group therapy sessions all day. Seeing others here, I see how I must have come across to people when I was far more catatonic. I cried a lot trying to fall asleep last night and again today. The feeling with tears is I'm unworthy of this place, these people, and this care. Who am I? Who am I to deserve this? Why do I get access to something like this? Also triggered thinking about finding a crap job when I leave, and I'm worried of falling back into my hole quickly. I'm worried about falling back into my hole quickly and still feel like I do. To come here and not get well would be sad. That was all I wrote. So, the who am I to deserve this? I know exactly where that thinking is coming from. And it's why I started to get upset and cry. And when I lived in the car, there's this split between the reality that a majority of people live inside of, which is I have a job, I have a place to live, I go to the grocery store, the news, the blah blah blah, your routine, your day in day out thing. And you have your whole life of that, but then suddenly to have everything ripped from you, and it almost seems like overnight you go from what is routine and normal to a completely blank board. And you're in this space where you don't really know who you are or what to do. It hurts. And the reason I felt I didn't deserve it is because when I was in that split for that long, I very much identified with the homeless people. I saw myself totally as one of them. And to me, I was no different than any one of them who was living out there. They're a human being just like me. Like, so why am I fucking special to get all this help and treatment? Like, that's what I was thinking sitting in there, because in my mind, I could think back to sitting in a parking lot and seeing all those people, at midnight walking around in the parking lots. So that's why I didn't feel worthy of the place and the people and the care and the treatment. It's tied to my story of not being good enough. Basically, that was what I was telling myself. I'm not good enough for this. I'm not good enough for this treatment or this help. Wow. That was far more emotional than I had thought was going to happen. I think I'll wrap it up there. Tuesday, 7 p.m., the evening notes. Tomorrow, I will publish the next day of notes, which would be my Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. notes. Until then, be well. Take care of yourself.